What's up, everyone? This is Gabriel from jgcrespomusic.com, and today is a special live stream event because I'm joined by my special guest and good friend and musician colleague. He's also a music educator, Gio Lombardi, and we need a close break for that now. Okay, so what we're going to do today, guys, is we are going to break down chord progression. I picked a kind of relevant pop R&B influenced pop song.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say the name right now because we might get taken down for copyright infringement, so you all know the drill. But we're going to play it. Some of you might recognize it. So what we're going to do is first start out by analyzing the chord progression with the number system. And if you don't remember that, quick refresher on it, you're kind of going through your major scale, but in chords, in block chords. And we're assigning numbers to these chords, right? So of course, if we're finishing, if we're keeping it in the diatonic system, the 1 chord is going to be major, 2's minor, 3's minor, 4's major, 5's dominant, etc. You can refer to another video on that where I explain that. But we're going to do a analysis in both major and minor just to kind of see how this chord progression fits. So the chords we're dealing with, we've got 2 sections of this, and then we'll get into the groove portion of it. For the B section, we've got B minor 7, D, E minor, and then we've got a couple passing chords here, or one passing chord in particular, F sharp minor 7. The reason I'm saying that might be a passing chord, it happens very quickly, but it's also not a chord that fits into our minor analysis. It does, however, fit into the major. So I'm going to let my friend Gio talk a little bit too. Gio, do you want to get into the A section a little bit? Do you have that, the chord progression for that?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the A section starts with A minor 9, and then it goes to B minor 7, and then to G. Now, here we can play the G major triad, or we could play the G major 7th if we just want to get a bit more jazzy. Not jazz, because you can't really say that word nowadays in pop music, right. But jazzy, just a drop, okay? And then we go to D, and then to A. Okay, so right. that's the A section.
Yeah, and we're kind of picking apart the harmony too, right? Like if from a guitar perspective, you can play. Maybe you can elaborate on that more, but you could play kind of the upper structure triad, if you will, right, of the chord. Because when we're talking G major 7, we've got the notes G, B, D, and F sharp, but you could essentially play a B minor, right, triad.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things that actually we could do here, and it depends from the context what the arranger producer wants and how the melody goes and how what kind of color we wanna give. So let me play the A for a second, okay?
A section, yeah.
I hope you guys can. I hope you guys can hear this.
Yeah, we're good.
Can you hear it?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the A section, Now, of course, we're going to have to imagine there's a singer here, right? We have to, pretend there's a singer here. But, I could play all kinds of things here on, at least 2 registers of the instrument. And now, well, this is mostly a jazz guitar because I'm doing a jazz record right now. So that's what I'm using. But it doesn't really change what I'm about to say. This is like the sweet spot of the instrument, okay? Like, let's say between a 3rd fret and the 9th fret, something like that, 10th fret. If you even get into the 3rd fret would be kind of, too bassy, and, past the 9th fret would be a bit too high. So somewhere in between, like the 5th fret is like the kingdom of this instrument. Everything that is around here sounds always good. So yeah, all kinds of different things here. Look, for instance, the easiest thing that in this kind of context a guitarist could do, and actually this is on the record, I heard them playing something, would be like a single note, muted part. Right. So let me come up with something like super duper basic that would pass the test of time, no matter.
And Gio, just to quickly interrupt you, and for those musicians out there that have maybe not recognizing the song because it's a little newer, we could go back a bit. Michael Jackson, Al Jarreau, that era, strictly those mute parts in there, to kind of really funkify the music.
Funkified, I like that.
Yeah. The new word.
Yeah, the new word, So something like super basic that it's been, on records ever since, the guys you just named. So I could play something like this. Let's see. And so forth. So a very simple lick with a small variation, right?
Right.
And then two so talking about that is the accents is really, where the groove is. These two upstrokes, is important. So the upstroke, it means that we are shifting the accents not on the downbeat but on the upbeat, and this is like 16, note based, and that's exactly where you want to play. You want to be. You want to play around with that to find something that really gets into the pocket. Right. Is not invading the space of my good friend here, Gabriel, on keyboards. Right. Is not bothering my good friend in the back, playing the bass, and it doesn't bother the singer. Okay, it's really in that sweet spot, and usually is around or like in the vicinity of the third string, fourth string, somewhere between the fifth and seventh fret.
It's kind of the middle, and for people that play the keyboard, it would be kind of that around middle C register area that you don't want to, overcrowd the space. But the key is, like you just said, the singer is what we're doing. We're creating a nice, palette or backing track for the vocalist. If we play too much, any instrument, drums, if you hit a crash cymbal right when the singer is about to, come in, that could be disturbing. So, so it's like the same thing. And so kind of going now to the keys side of this thing, if I know, that the guitar, that's where you get into the producer space and you start imagining the parts that are coming. So if I want that funky, mute guitar and I want it in the middle register so it sounds, kind of nice and warm, as a keyboard player, I can't automatically go through and play the chords and just do, right? I've just trampled all over that space. So I'm going to want to go into more of a pad method there of just, right, just kind of holding, and I'm not doing it strictly, that's where you get into not being a robot, but I'm not doing it as exactly as whole notes. I might be starting the chord of the measure coming on the last 16th note of the measure prior. And you kind of get, keyboard players like George Duke and Greg Fillinganes, all those session guys, they just made a living off doing that, where you put the groove different places on different parts. But the other thing I'm doing too is on the keyboard tracks playing less notes too. So for my E minor 7, right, I don't want to be doubling the E. The bass player is playing it as well. So I'm playing basically, it's kind of like an inverted G triad in my right hand. And in some cases, I might not even play the root, so I might double a middle note there. Obviously, I just have to be careful to not, trample over the other rhythm section players. But I think going back to what you just said about the pocket, it's the space in between too. So people can notice, when you're playing that mute part, it's falling in between, because you could be locked into the hi-hat, with the 16th notes, and then it would just get buried in the mix, so that. But that, for all of you that are trying to make beats out there and stuff like that, if you're trying to make this solid groove, I think the key is going back to that, thinking, you're doing this for a vocalist. So even though, you might be listening to it instrumentally for, a couple of weeks before you get a vocalist on the track, still think ahead, is that going to clash with the melody,
you have to have some sort of way. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I mean, you have to have some sort of a strategy, start to imagine, where you want the sound to be. Sometimes, as a guitarist, we are requested to give that nice, that, right. You know what I mean? Busy, super pocket-driven type of 16 notes, funky pattern, and that's okay. But that is really on a rare occasion. You hear that only sporadically in certain points of the song, here and there, some accent, so
I think
something more.
good times from La Chic. I'm thinking like without playing that,
Yeah.
but if for everybody that knows that track, and I'm pretty sure that's everybody at this point, you'd really hear keyboard stays in the pad pocket, not a lot of busy stuff going on. Why? Because the guitar, you know, that's that Nile Rodgers is, you know, giving you the funk right there. You want to hear that, you know. It would be, you know, equally as bad if you got a keyboard player that's like, no, it's my turn to shine, you know. So
can I play that lick, or are we gonna get?
yeah, I think we can play it. I mean, play a piece of it. I guess we don't have the whole backing track on stuff. Yeah.
And so forth, you know.
Yeah,
if
so
you
all
have
those,
that,
yeah.
if you have that, you can't have the keyboard player, you know, playing on top of that. It'll be, you know. I actually did play with a drummer that was, we were playing a James Brown tune, Sex Machine, maybe. Yeah, I think it was that. When we went to the bridge, you know, I think it goes like,
yeah.
And so this works if the drum is straight, funky but straight, not invading the space. And he was playing all over that.
Yeah, and this, I mean, we don't have a specific focus on, I guess, drums today, but as the overall groove, that could be applied to drummers too. You know, if you're getting heavy with those ghost notes on the snare, you know, too much, and it's, you know, it's hard to, for everybody. Basically, the arrangement has to breathe. You know, it has to have its own space. Oh. I think another thing too is like kind of developing different pockets for different sections too, you know. So like for people that are trying to make, I'm not really going off of this song specifically, but let's say you're trying to make that kind of song. Another modern example, Get Lucky from Daft Punk, right? And that's got Nile Rodgers on guitar, and I think even Paul Jackson Jr. did some parts, but and then there's Keith, you know, that dynamic of where you're not invading the space kind of creates the groove, you know. But everybody starts differently. I personally, when I'm producing, you know, I'll give a screen share here of Logic if I can, real quick. Let's see. Give me 1 second, just to see it. This is not a visual of. We're not gonna get the audio in here probably, but yeah. So I personally start out like if you're working in Logic, whatever DAW you're working in, Pro Tools is excellent. Obviously, that's the industry standard. Cubase. Honestly, DAWs are like, from every engineer I've talked to, they're kind of just, you know, whichever one you can get that pro level track out of, you know. I'm not gonna start pushing a specific one, but I, as a keyboard player, because of the MIDI parts a lot in Logic, and I know you, Gio, work in Logic as well. The Logic drummer, it's a great starting place, right? You get a kind of a basic groove. You know, if you click on, you know, this is not a production class here, but you can kind of modify how busy it is, you know, what patterns you want. I start with that. Go ahead.
In a way, it is a little bit. This is also invading the field of a production, you know, perspective in a way. So
right, yeah, excellent, yeah, it is, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Because arranging and production, I feel, have become one, and at least in the past, you know, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, because everybody's, you know, nobody's sitting down and getting a chart out and going, okay, let's do the, you know, voicings here, you know, is it drop 2, you know, so, you know, what inversions in the orchestra, that's not really happening anymore, you know. But you got to still think like an orchestra, because at the same rate that you wouldn't give notes that clash to the string section and the woodwind section, if you're not doing that style of arranging, you're doing more, you know, let's say hip hop, for instance, you know, you want those, you know, pads in the background, some little lead lick, you know, whether it's coming from guitar or keyboard. I always recommend, you know, try to have, I feel like the best records that are coming out now have some acoustic instrument in them as well, because if you keep it all MIDI and programmed, it can be very stiff, you know.
That's true.
Might lack
and
that.
Also, now another thing about, well, going back to this instrument, sometimes all you need is few notes, and actually Gabriel was saying, you know, to play the upper structure of the chord. That works. But, you know, so if in upper structure, I mean, as upper structures, we are referring to the 9th, the 11th, and the 13th of the chord, the 3 highest notes, you know.
Right. I was referring in also just in a context of a 7th chord, you could even take the 3, 5, and 7 and treat it as that, you know.
Oh, okay.
The upper structure. But yeah, obviously the traditional sense is you're right, the 9th, 11th, and 13th, which is where we get into that jazzy sound sometimes, you know. But,
Yeah, so I was going to say that, that could be a bit too risky, but
Right,
you
right.
know I would say that, the up to the 11th, actually the most dangerous note is the 13th.
Right.
The 9th you can get along with that. The 11th, you can play with that too, but the 13th is a bit too harsh. So
And the ninth
but
could be, a placement thing too, because if we think about the note in the ninth, it could be a sus2 if you put it closer to the chord, right, and like a more cluster voice,
yeah,
and then that would be, that's where you get into stylistic things. But that's the more you play different genres, you kind of learn stuff from each genre too. I think playing getting to play Tito, or another guitarist that we played with that does flamenco. I learned something from that, learned something from you playing jazz and funk. And, you just learn stuff from every
oh yeah,
musician,
sure.
but stylistically, like if you have to play with a rock group, right? And they're like, hey man, at least as a keyboard player, immediately, that's too jazzy. You sound like you're doing a,
Oh yeah, yeah.
Smooth jazz. And it's like, okay, what am I doing wrong? And I have to translate that into my head. Maybe, this chord, G major 7, maybe I could just, do G sus2, and we got a little drums in the back
Just us
there.
two,
But,
yeah, 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 sure,
so
sure.
something like that, just being able to like, translate, because you have a lot of producers nowadays that not necessarily familiar with the harmony. So they're never going to tell you, hey, take out that ninth, or hey, take out this. They're just going to tell you that doesn't fit the vibe of the, what we're trying to do,
Yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, that's the case. But for instance, um, on this track, so let's, oops, sorry, let's review the chord. We have like E minor 9. This is the A section. E minor 9, B minor 7. Well, here we can, add the major 7th, and then we have D to A. So in here, if I'm playing like E minor 11th, I mean, already the chord has the 9th, and then if I had the 11th, I could have this voicing. I could have this. Just a little pad. Now, of course, you would have to. And what I did at the very end, I played a nice little groovy thing on double stops, which is another very important tools for guitarists. There's two notes at the played at the same time. It gives a nice like. So like a. And so forth. So I was playing the 9th, the 11th, okay. Then here, this is a B minor 9 now. That's my 9th, my 7th, my 3rd, minor 3rd, and then I'm just playing a B minor triad over G, which works. Speaking of upper structures, and then this is a double stop over the B minor pentatonic scale, which is a very important tool for playing, groovy pocket parts. And then I'm just playing the 3rd of A and the 5th to the 6th. So I'm adding a color note. And
Gio, talk about the choice of which scale. So the mute parts, a lot of them, because I don't play on your level on guitar, but I've tried to play those mute parts, and you go, oh, it's a lot of minor pentatonic kind of stuff. Obviously there's some common tones, but like, what's your, let's say we're playing a song, just to make it simple for everybody, in the key of C major. What scale, if you had to use a minor scale for the pentatonic to kind of pick out notes from mutes, what would you go for? How would you know what scale?
Would be the minor pentatonic that every guitar player knows. This one.
Yeah, right. I
know. Which is actually a great place, a great starting point. Is a great starting point, because
kind of the relative minor, basically, right?
Yeah, it's a relative minor, and the way the pentatonic works is, first of all, is very finger friendly, for a guitarist, because it's vertical, so you can create great patterns. And these intervals are, you know, interesting musically speaking. So you can create lots of, you know, if this is my song, is like C major 7, G sus, and I can. And this will work just fine. It's just a beautiful scale, and it is very production and arranging oriented.
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit of theory and it's a little bit of using your ear, which I think everybody misses the boat on nowadays. It's kind of like, if it doesn't sound right, you know, that should be the cue, you know. You know, it's like it's I don't know, music in a way, music arranging is kind of like cooking, you know, where there's something, you know, when something needs a little more salt or
a great analogy,
you know.
Yeah,
so you know,
yeah.
You know, you got to think, I think, like for people that are trying to arrange parts, just think that, you know, common tones. And that's another thing I put in my other video too, which is kind of like the idea of where you can keep it really simple. Why, if you're doing that A minor pentatonic, you know, why does it work for you to go G, A, C, you know, over C major 7? Well, it's because there is a G in the C major 7. There's no A, but that's, you know, there could be like a sixth, you know, major 6 kind of thing happening there, you know. So you just never know, but
it's hitting all the common tones. And like for the song we were demoing just a second ago, I mean the pop song,
right,
we're working on it, like is in the key. The A part is like in the key of you know, B minor or D major. So the B minor pentatonic, which is D major pentatonic, would be a great tool to use to find like single notes, double stops lines, you know.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Also some other voicings. Oh, sorry, I'm just getting a message. Okay, never mind. So that is a great tool to use. And of course, two more things. You know, when you think as a like in my case, as a guitarist, and you're about to play, record a line. You know, the tone is important. The effects are important because how do you, you know, manipulate your sound, your tone is determining which way you're going, you know. Right. Now here I'm kind of really dry, okay? So I'm playing something that is like dry, short nose, and groovy, okay? So I'm getting really into the pocket. But, you know, if I put here like a long delay, some chorus, some like stereo imagers, so I'm spreading the sound, I'm thinking differently. Right. Okay, so then I'm thinking more about like colors, like drop like a painter, like giving some nice colors to my painting, you know.
And to go into the engineering mindset of that too, I think like there's a lot of engineers that, like, you know, they'll say to all the musicians, keyboard included, want your tracks dry, you know. I personally, like, I think if you're arranging, it is good to have the musician themselves put, you know, give you both, you know, give you a dry track and give you the effect. I
agree.
You know, because
that will change,
you get a starting point, you know. So
that will change the way you play. Another very important thing are these, you guys. They change the sound. Okay.
Yeah, the picks, yeah, for sure.
So you know, this is like darker than this one, which is brighter.
Yeah, you can hear it. Even on Zoom, you can hear the difference.
Yeah. So if you can hear it in Zoom, imagine a record, you know. So there are all kinds of things that you have to, you know, keep in mind.
But yeah, it's kind of like, I think it's like well, for guitar, let's reference guitar like Santana, for instance, which is the, you know, probably the tone is what everybody, you know, loves the most of him. If you think of the mix, like to the whole mix as a whole, I kind of noticed it's okay. Yeah, there's keyboard, there's drums, there's bass and this and that, but they kind of EQ the mix to kind of carve out the space for his warm guitar tone, because that's, you know, he's essentially the priority of the record, you know, whereas in most cases, like we're talking about the stuff that, you know, Paul Jackson and all those guys tracked, you know, the vocalists were the priority. So they did killer parts, but half the time it was just like, how does this not affect the vocalists, you know, ego, you know, or something, you know, just get the notes out there, you know, basically. So
I would say that in the case of Carlos Santana, yes, he's the focus. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. So yeah, we're going to be wrapping up here shortly, but this is an awesome get together with my friend Gio Lombardi. Look forward to doing some more, guys. We'll get the yeah, we'll get the audio quality and all that stuff better as we go along. But this was a good first go around at it. So hope you all enjoyed watching. Yeah, absolutely. And Gio, before we sign off, where can people find your music? What's your webpage or handle? Anything you want to shout out?
GioLombardi.com, www.giolombardi.com, spelled GIOLOMBARDI.com. That's my website. On Facebook as Gio Lombardi, on Spotify. You guys can check out my record. It's called Scriptamanent.
Nice.
Just look for, Gio Lombardi. That's me. You'll find me.
Yeah, and we've got some stuff on YouTube too. I can always drop it in the description too that we played on recently. Also did a Christmas song too, which I know we're in the new year, but maybe people are waiting for December, ahead of time. So. Well, thank you so much, Gio, for joining on this. This was exciting. Hope you guys got some good tips and ideas on arranging, how to create those grooves, and understanding a little bit of the harmony and how you can split that up among the instruments. Look forward to seeing you guys. And as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and please share the video.